Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Dune in June, an inaugural BookTube event created by Sean D. Stanfast, in which we read Frank Herbert's masterpiece Dune in the month of June, which is a big ask, but not impossible. It's a bigger ask than usual because of all the BookTube events going on in June, but it is doable to read this. Even as a first-time reader, it is doable. The first part of this book is also called Dune. Second part is called Muad'Dib, and the third part is called The Prophet. And as of today, we are launching into the second part of this book for Dune in June. But a number of you have been emailing me about this, especially about a number of you who've read this for the first time. Have been saying that you just kept reading, you just keep turning the pages, so you're well into Muad'Dib by now, the second part. And it was two first-time readers of this book that I aimed a bunch of videos that I made myself. I've read this book, I don't know how many times. I've recommended it, I don't know how many times. I made a primer video about the deep antecedents to the very first chapter of the book, the stuff that you kind of need to know. You're going to get it in the course of reading this book. Frank Herbert is going to make sure that you do. He's a very skilled writer. But it can still be a little bit much. It can still be a little bit intimidating to embark on this book that you've heard so much about for so long and wonder if you are going to get it all. You might wonder if you are going to get it all. So I made a video demystifying a little of that, and then I made a cast video about who all of these characters are and what role they have to play. I didn't spoil the book nor even hint at the plot, but I did tell you who they are and what roles they play in their world. And then what I thought I would do is a close reading of a couple of the beginning chapters of part one. The beginning smaller sections of every section of this book. They're not numbered or named. They don't behave like normal chapters, but they are normal chapters in a book. And I enjoyed that, of course. I enjoyed that. I love doing that. And a number of you have emailed me saying that I don't have any of the emails in front of me, but some of them are quite in depth. One in particular, I'm sure you're watching, was quite in depth in ways that I can't really object to. This person pointed out that I usually have nothing but scornful words for academia on this channel, that I don't like the implied power differential, that I don't like the complete absence of parity. And this person pointed out, if you carried that hatred of academia into the classroom, what a teacher you must have been. I don't know about that. I never had any complaints, but I don't know about that. But one of you, that person pointed out that what those chapter by chapter videos that I did for Dune really feel like is you taking us through the day's reading as though you were at the front of a classroom. I don't know that is true, first of all, and I also don't know if that's exactly the effect that I'm going for, considering how many people have read this book and are watching those videos. I'm certainly not meaning to teach them anything. But I appreciate the comment in the spirit in which it was made, that's an element of a read-along. For me, that's an element of a read-along. I've never done a read-along. I don't think I've ever done a read-along on this channel where I wasn't really, really familiar with the book. That's definitely true. In this case, I've never taught Dune, but I'm really, really familiar with it. I did a few of those videos just thinking, this will launch us. This will get us into week number 1 of Dune in June. But a lot of you said, no, please do this. Please just keep doing this. So this is our newest read-along. It wasn't planned on my part at all. I actually had a read-along in mind for June, and I'm just going to scrap it. We're just going to do this for June. It'll take a long time. I think it'll take a lot longer than June, but we'll just do it until we're done. We're going to go chapter by chapter until we're done reading Dune. So we are nowhere near the segment called Muad'Dib. We are still firmly ensconced in the first part of the book. And we are dealing with the very first, not even day, the very first few hours that House Atreides has on the planet Dune. The ruling parts of House Atreides, outlying members and armed service people have been on Dune for a couple of days, but the family has only just arrived. Duke Leto Atreides, his lady, Jessica, who is a member of the Bene Gesserit, but she is not his wife. She's not his duchess. She is his love and the mother of his heir, young Paul Atreides, but she's not married to him. And the Duke's main operatives. There's a warrior troubadour named Gurney Halleck. There's a dashing swordsman named Duncan Idaho. We haven't met him. We've only heard about him. And there's the Duke's mentat, his sort of living computer, Thufir Hawat, who's also a master assassin, a master of propaganda. He is the security arm, the internal security arm of Duke Leto's house apparatus. It was he who was largely responsible for establishing the security of their new home in the palace at Arrakis on Dune. And that security is an open question because House Harkonnen, the bad guys of the book, had the running of Dune before Atreides, the House Atreides was given the planet. So it can be assumed, it is assumed by all, by Hawat certainly, by the Duke and everybody else, that the Harkonnens did not leave willingly. Dune is the only planet anywhere in the Imperium where spice can be found, the spice melange, and it's incredibly valuable. So anybody that has the planet, they have to harvest a lot of it, but they're going to make a good, tidy sum in the process. It's understood that House Harkonnen would not have left voluntarily, and because they're villainous, they would probably have left lots of traps behind. So Hawat has a lot of work to do. Not only winning over the population of Arrakis and the rest of Dune, but also diffusing the local buildings so that they're not dangerous to the family. Hawat's men have been all over everything, checking everywhere, every nook and cranny, checking every crevice. That's what we've been told. Hawat has missed a few things, as we've already been over. There is a traitor, for instance, in the midst of House Atreides. The Harkonnens have a plan to bring down House Atreides, to destroy it. And their plan involves using 2 legions of the Emperor's own superior soldiers, the Sardaukar, in disguise, so that the rest of the houses in the Imperium don't know that the Emperor is helping one house to pick off another. That would be disastrous for the Emperor. The houses might band against him. But in addition to that plan, there's also an internal plan. Duke Atreides is going to be betrayed. And from the beginning of the book, we know who the traitor is. It's Dr. Yueh. It's the family's imperially trained doctor. The Baron Harkonnen has found a way to subvert that imperial training and make Dr. Yueh betray his friends, betray this family that he has served for years. Hawat misses that. He doesn't have any idea that Yueh is a traitor. Even though, as we learn, the reason that Yueh is a traitor, the reason that the Baron was able to turn his conditioning, is because Yueh has a Bene Gesserit wife. And the Harkonnens have her. And he's not sure if she's alive and in torment or dead. He needs to find out. He needs to be sure. The Harkonnens have promised that he will reunite with her if he does what they want. Somehow, Hawat misses all of that. He misses all of that. The Duke would have conscripted Dr. Yueh on the basis of his Imperial Suk conditioning, not necessarily on the basis of his qualifications. The Duke would have wanted Yueh to be a physician for his household, which means that Yueh would have been vetted by Hawat, who apparently does not learn that the physician has a Bene Gesserit wife. Hawat does not trust the Bene Gesserit anyway. He apparently does not know that. Certainly the Lady Jessica doesn't know that. She guesses at it in the last scene that we saw. She guesses that he had a wife who was Bene Gesserit and that the Harkonnens killed her. That would be an important thing that Hawat would want to know about the physician who is handling the care of the young master, who is doing the naked examinations of the Duke. You'd kind of want to know that about him, and apparently no one does. Except the Harkonnens, who somehow learn that about him. How do they learn that about him? And how do they turn him? When is Yueh ever not with the Atreides? I would assume never. So that means he had to have been turned through communications. How is that done? Without Hawat knowing about it. And if the communications about his kidnapped wife happened before he was accepted into the Duke's service, then how did Hawat miss that? How did he miss that fact? Well, that's one thing. Dr. Yueh is the traitor, and that is coming up. But for right now, we deal with something else that Hawat missed. In another recent scene, Lady Jessica is looking around at all of the boxes that need to be unpacked. Apparently, there are no personnel to do that. And where everything has to go when the Duke introduces her to her new housekeeper, a Fremen woman, the native people of Dune, called the Shadout Mapes. And the Duke says, there she is, she's over there, go and get your assignments from her, I gotta go. And he passes her in the hallway and he leaves. And she goes and talks to Lady Jessica, but she is armed. She has a knife in her bosom that the Lady Jessica guesses, the Lady Jessica's Bene Gesserit trained senses see that she is armed. And they have a confrontation. It's not a violent confrontation, but it could have been. If the Lady Jessica had handled it differently, it could have been. And she admits that although she's Bene Gesserit trained, and we are told by Frank Herbert's narration that the Bene Gesserit in unarmed combat are terrifying, they are physically trained, she might have lost. Jessica says herself, you might be able to draw my life's water. It's possible. She's just wandering around. This Fremen woman is just wandering around the keep in Arrakis with a knife. The Duke doesn't know about it. Hawat appears not to know about it. The Lady Jessica knows about it and doesn't tell anybody. It's not the very first thing she does. She doesn't get on any kind of house communicator and say, oh, by the way, the housekeeper is armed. The housekeeper is going to look for Paul, the young heir. Jessica seems not to care. She doesn't say, do you have any other weapons? Do you have any other concealed weapons that nobody's found on you? The fact that she would carry a weapon means she's not trustworthy. Even if she was carrying it for some mystic Fremen reason, even once Jessica has taken it from her, she's not trustworthy. She needs to be vetted more heavily. At least she needs to be vetted more heavily. That doesn't happen. Instead, they have their mystical meeting. Jessica convinces her that she is a chosen one from another world and a figure of Fremen religious mysticism, and so there's no violence. And then we get a scene where Jessica is wandering around. She's looking at the rooms that are going to be the new domestic arrangement for the house, not the official rooms, but the family rooms, when she encounters Dr. Yueh. He has just sedated young Paul. They look in on him. Paul is on a cot in the next room, sound asleep. And then they have a chat. They have a conversation. And part of the conversation is interesting. They talk about what a horrible place this is and how it has examined it all, and it's a harsh world. And Jessica mentioned something about water on the planet, that wells don't seem to work, that the water trickles for a minute and then disappears. Why is that? What is happening to interfere with the water cycle of this world? It's a glancing little thing, and the whole time that we're getting that scene, we're getting tormented internal monologues of Dr. Yueh, who is not happy being a traitor. He loves the Atreides. He doesn't want to betray them. He's sorry that he has to, and he has plans, as we're going to learn, he has plans to soften the blow. But he is going to betray them. And he's agonizing over the whole thing. He comes an inch away from telling the Lady Jessica of his plan. I can't help but think that a logical examination of his plan would tell him that he has a better chance of succeeding in one way or another with his wife if the Lady Jessica is involved than if she's not. But he doesn't ever come to that conclusion. And he also at one point almost gives the game away because he can't keep his hatred of the Harkonnen out of his voice when he mentions them, and the Lady Jessica detects it, of course. Because we are told that her Bene Gesserit senses in conversation, her perceptions, have been heightened by school training. That she's extremely adept at picking up subtle vocal and body clues from everyone around her about everything. That it takes the appearance almost of mind reading. We'll see in a future scene that it almost looks like mind reading. But she spends an entire scene standing next to a man who intends to betray her into slavery and her son into almost certain death. And she doesn't notice. She doesn't guess what it is. She thinks, oh, he's hiding something. I wonder what it is. What? He's not just hiding something. He's hiding the biggest possible thing anyone could hide. And he's hiding it poorly. Even Paul has noticed that he seems to be acting weird. And yet the Lady Jessica goes through that scene, just sails through that scene. No trouble at all. Just I think he's hiding something, but I've got to learn to trust him. Then we get to the chapter that we're reading today, which starts with an epigraph from another book by Princess Irulan. This character we've never met. She's written a ton of books about Paul Atreides, about Muad'Dib. But keep in mind, when we're told in these epigraphs, we're told this is from the Handbook of Muad'Dib, this is from the Child's Book of Muad'Dib, this is from the Song Book of Muad'Dib. We don't know what Muad'Dib is. We have no idea what that terminology means. We don't know who Princess Irulan is. I think it adds a lot to the book. It adds a lot of lived-in texture like that. It makes you feel like you're encountering something that was real long before you opened the book, which is the goal of any science fiction or fantasy world building. It's to make you feel like you are opening a window on something that already existed. That is a wonderful feeling. I go to my world building in science fiction or fantasy for that feeling. I very seldom get it. But in the chapter that we're reading now, we realize that Paul was not, in fact, asleep. When Dr. Yueh and the Lady Jessica were looking in on him, he was faking it. He's that good that he can fake his mother. Although, the total acuitiveness, the acuity of her senses, I don't know. I suspect it. She stands next to a guy who is planning to betray her and notices nothing at all along those lines. But we realize that Paul is awake. And being a 15-year-old, he is eager to explore the palace. His little room, the little room that he's picked out for himself, seems tailor-made to entice him. The handle of the door is a kind of spaceship handle. There's a secret closet behind yet another wall of bookcases. We're told that there are empty bookcases everywhere in this palace. And the headboard of his bed is carved wood or fake wood, one or the other. If it's not fake wood, then it had to have been imported. There's no wood on Dune. Same thing that Jessica notices earlier about the gigantic rafter beams of the main household. They had to have been imported or fake, synthetic wood, because there's no forests on Dune. But the carved headboard of the bed that attracted Paul is a fish on water. And it is also the subtle controls for the room itself. If you press on the fish's eye or rotate it, you can change the ambient temperature in the room. If you press on individual raised waves, you can change other room controls. That's what we're told about that headboard. And that's what attracted Paul to it. But now he's eager to explore. His mother is off talking with Dr. Yueh, then she seems to leave. Dr. Yueh, he's certain will just find a book and start reading. So that he is free to slip out and explore the palace. He tells himself that he will not misbehave so badly as to leave the palace. But he wants to explore. He wants to look around, as any teenage boy would. So he hops off the bed and makes to the door. And the minute he does, he realizes that there's something wrong. The wooden headboard of his bed has folded down, and out of it has come a thing no longer than your finger. A hunter-seeker. A remote-guided killing device that's like a little worm in the air, borne aloft on a suspensor field. It's razor sharp. It is designed to locate its prey and puncture the skin and burrow up through the nerve endings and the arteries to a major organ. Horrific way to die. Horrific device for killing. And one of those has come out of the headboard of Paul's bed and is hovering ominously in the room, looking for him. There's not much light in the room, and there's not much of an optic in this thing that small anyway for the lens, so the remote operator, who has to be nearby, can't really see much. So the thing is entirely activated by movement, and the first thing Paul does when he hears an odd sound behind him is freeze completely. And keep in mind, his mother has been giving him Bene Gesserit training. So he doesn't freeze the way you or I would freeze. He freezes completely. Catatonically, we're told. So the thing is confused. It isn't sensing any movement at all, so it's quartering the room in an attempt to find him. And Paul knows that he has no choice in the matter. He has to grab the thing and disable it. A remarkable feat for a 15-year-old boy. For a thing that moves this fast and is this small, he has to grab it and disable it. He knows he can't call for Dr. Yueh, who, remember, is in the next room, because the minute Dr. Yueh opens the door, the thing will attack him. And he can't have that. So he is just thinking that when suddenly the door opens anyway. It's not Dr. Yueh, it's the Shadat Mapes, who has come looking for him. The thing beelines for her, and Paul has no choice. No more time for preparation, no more time for thought. It's beeline straight for her, and he grabs it and slams its nose against the door, disabling it. There's a crunching sound. He's not 100% sure that it's completely inactive, but he's got it firmly in his hand, and he has saved her life. She's the first Fremen he's ever seen, the blue on blue eyes of the spice addiction. She's a household servant. She might be a housekeeper, but she wears the sackcloth of a household servant, which I guess is why Paul refers to her mentally as a creature several times. This creature, who is this creature? Could this creature be operating this device, etc., etc.? It's a built-in disdain that doesn't make him very attractive, but we're going to see. Paul's never an attractive character. You're not supposed to root for this guy, I don't think. But we'll get to that. We have a long way to go in Dune. He grabs the thing and smashes it. So it is probably disabled. She is remarkably unfazed. She doesn't scream. She just says, oh, that was probably going to kill me, wasn't it? Why didn't you run? Why did you save me? I owe you my life. He says, well, I saved both of us. I didn't just save you. She mentions that Paul's father's men are looking for him. And he says, go and tell them that I have found a hunter-seeker and disabled it in my room, and that they need to search the palace immediately to find the operator. The operator of this thing cannot be far. He must be inside the building, and we won't know him. He won't be a Confederate of ours, so he should be easy to find. They need to go and find him. And the shout-out Mape says, well, I will do that, but first there's a debt between us. You saved my life. I owe you something. And the way she repays that debt is to tell him that the Fremen are aware that there is a traitor in the Atreides household. She doesn't know anything more than that. She just knows there's a traitor in the household. And that is her way of discharging this debt. Which is pretty confusing. Why didn't she tell that to Jessica? She owes a lot more than just a debt to Jessica. She owes allegiance to Jessica. She owes her life to Jessica. Why doesn't she tell that to her? Why did she save that up to barter it with Paul? And was she going to mention it if he didn't save her life? Was she going to mention it at all? And also, how would she know? How would she know that there's a traitor among the household? Where would you get that information from? Unless the Fremen know. And how would they know? There are a couple of avenues to answer that question. When I've posed this question to Dune fanatics over the years, there's not one character in particular that tends to come up. I find that answer, we'll get to that answer in future chapters, I find that answer hard to believe, but there is an avenue, there is a potential way. However you want to answer it, she considers the debt expunged and goes running to tell the men what Paul told her. And that's it. That's the end of this chapter. Raises an immediate question just in terms of on and off-stage logistics of why Paul doesn't run to those men himself. They're not far. They're right down the hall. Why doesn't he run to them himself to spare time? Why does he have someone else do that? We're going to see he goes looking for his mother, but why does he do that first? Why doesn't he tell these men first? Time is of the essence. The operator of this thing knows it's been disabled. And for all they know, he's on the roof or in the courtyard and could flee. That's one question. Just a noises off type stage direction question. Why doesn't he go and tell the guards himself first? Only take a minute. But there's another question that I have in this chapter that is a little bit deeper than that. Paul is examining. He's thinking about the life on Dune. He's thinking about his recent lessons with Dr. Yueh about life forms on Dune. Not the Fremen, but wildlife on Dune. And he thinks this. He thought of the film book Yueh had shown him, titled Arrakis, His Imperial Majesty's Desert Botanical Testing Station. It was an old film book from before the discovery of the spice. Names flitted through Paul's mind, each with its picture imprinted by the book's mnemonic pulse. Saguro, burrow bush, date palm, sand verbena, evening primrose, barrel cactus, incense bush, smoke tree, creosote bush, kit fox, desert hawk, kangaroo mouse. Names and pictures from man's tyrannic past. and maybe to be found nowhere else now except in the universe except here on Arrakis. Okay, that's great, and that's interesting to me. Uh, Half the Tyrannic, that means from Terra, from Earth, half of the Tyrannic life forms that are listed there would not live on the planet Dune as it's described in this book. They would die. Uh, the other half might manage to do so fairly well. It's interesting. I think it's a callback to a much earlier draft of this book in which Herbert is drawing a much closer connection between Earth and Arrakis, between now and then. I think that in his earliest conceptions of this book, I think there's a much closer one-to-one line between those two things. Arrakis would have its own indigenous life form. It wouldn't just be the sandworms. It would have an ecosystem of its own. That would be vast. If the sandworms are new additions, well, the planet would still have, if it's a living biosphere, it would have a living biome. It wouldn't need kit foxes from Earth. And how did they get there anyway? And when? But that's not the part that really got to me here. The part that really got to me here is that the film book is about His Imperial Majesty's station on Arrakis. But it was before the discovery of the spice. I've been saying all along, I said in my primer video, that the spice melange enhances, among the other things that it does, it enhances precognitive abilities in some people who are disposed along those lines. It turns out the Atreides have a massive predisposition for precognition. They don't know it, or they only vaguely know it, because Paul is having dreams that do come true. The Duke has apparently never had such a thing, and the old Duke has never had any such thing. Maybe the introduction of Lady Jessica's bloodline is causing that, although the Lady Jessica's bloodline has no predisposition for prescience at all. And we don't know her bloodline at the beginning of the book, but we learn it, and there's no prescience there either. But the guild navigators, the people that run the Spacing Guild, use the spice to enhance their own prescience so that they can plot the course of starships in hyperspace, so that you don't end your hyperspace journey in the middle of a star or in the middle of a rock. And I've been saying from the beginning that it's that prescience, it's the spice that makes interstellar travel possible. And the guild has the monopoly on interstellar travel. And here in this chapter, I'm reminded that His Imperial Majesty, that the Imperium existed before spice was discovered. And that, of course, sent me back to a book that I spend a lot of time in, the Dune Encyclopedia. I don't want to show it on this channel. I don't want to flaunt it. I've shown it on this channel many times before, my battered copy. I don't want to flaunt it because apparently it is eye-wateringly expensive to buy a copy of the Dune Encyclopedia. I don't know why. I have no idea why that would be. But I went to the Dune Encyclopedia. I looked up Melange, of course, the entry for Melange. And then I looked up the entry for the Spacing Guild. None of it is in Dune. If it's not in Dune, it doesn't count. I don't care how many ancillary works Frank Herbert wrote or authorized. If it's not in this book, it doesn't count. So you're not missing anything by not knowing it. But I was curious to know. There is faster than light technology here. These ships have faster than light technology. You can use them even without the spice to safely predict your path. So there was an Imperium before the spice. That sent me down a rabbit hole about where the spice was, when it was discovered, who discovered it, who discovered that the spice was good for anything. Who would bother to go prospecting on the sands of Dune when you have to deal with 500-meter-long worms? Why would anybody do that? Why would anybody think that it was worth anything? And who were the first people to think that it could do anything? Of course, the speculation is that it was the Bene Gesserit. Of course, they've got their thumbs in everybody's pie. But I pulled myself out of the Dune Encyclopedia, not only because I don't want this to be a reference quest. I hate the dude bros who read this thing as a reference quest, who read this book as a reference quest. I hate that kind of reading just in general. I hate that all together. Where there are dude bros out there that turn literally everything they read into House of Leaves by Dan Ilewski. Did you get this? Well, I read a bit of Juvenilia that he wrote on a napkin that's preserved behind glass that he wrote 50 years ago and that nobody's ever seen except me. And it gives me a real strong hint that I understand this bit. You know, I really understand this bit. It's a quiz. It's a cryptogram. It's not actually a work of literature. Because, you know, how gay would that be? I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to do that for Dune in June. I did go to the Dune Encyclopedia because I find it fascinating. It is not dry reading. It's effectively another Dune novel. But it was singularly unilluminating, except that little mention that the emperor, there was an empire and there was interplanetary travel before there was spice. All that means is that's just a reference to the fact that faster than light, hyperlight travel was possible. It just wasn't safe. The technology existed. So, uh, so, uh, so there were people on Dune before anyone knew what the spice could do, much less started trading in it. Which means there was interplanetary travel before then. Just a tiny little detail. Those little details obsess me when I do read-alongs like this. But the main thing is, the main point of this chapter is that Thufir Hawat sucks at his job. Because it's not just that the housekeeper was walking up to the mother of the heir with a knife on her person. It's not just that the doctor is incredibly and rather obviously compromised to betray the family. It's that there's a trap in the heir's room. All these rooms were searched and examined by Hawat and his men. Now, we're going to learn in the next chapter, or the chapter after that, where this operator is, and how theoretically, technically, he might have escaped notice. But that's just the operator. The Hunter-Seeker itself was behind a wooden headboard, and the wooden headboard is the controls. The headboard, you pull it down and you examine the controls that are the atmospheric controls for that room. Hawat or his men would certainly have pulled that headboard off and examined the controls. The controls are a perfect place to put a trap. Of some kind or other, a bomb, something like that. They would have examined those controls and found the Hunter-Seeker. And instead they don't. Now, I have brought this point up over the years, and people said, well, the control operator is hidden. Maybe somebody put the Hunter-Seeker in there after Hawat examined the room. No, absolutely not. We are told, in just another chapter, we are told that this room was filled with booby traps long ahead of time by the Harkonnen, specifically because they knew the room would attract Paul. And that some would be detected and maybe others would not. And if the thing is implanted in there, well, given the condition of the operator, that would mean there's a second Confederate in the household. Two people that Hawat missed. I guess if he's so incompetent, it's possible. How his team missed a killer device. The Hunter-Seeker is not ambiguous. It can only do one thing. Paul recognizes it right away. It's a well-known tactic of assassination in royal houses. How Hawat and his men could have missed it in the headboard. All that we're ever told in this book is them apologizing and tripping over themselves to make excuses for how they missed the operator. What about the device itself? They missed that. It's behind a headboard, which would have been examined. It's not just a wooden headboard. It's a facade over mechanical controls. That's exactly the sort of thing you would examine in a room like this. But Paul's quickness of mind and body saves the day. And that ends the chapter. I promise you that not every Dune and Tune chapter is going to be 30 minutes long. I promise you. Oh my God. But we're going to wrap this up for now, and we will move on. We have had a tense moment, and tragedy has been narrowly averted. We'll move on to the next chapter next time. I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.